We are glad to be in God's presence this evening again. We are looking forward for these days to come together to study. And especially this is a unique time, as we have said. This is like an in-house training for us to improve our skills, to understand, the tools that is for us. And we are grateful for Dr. Julie Hayden. She is not a guest for us. I know that all of you know her very well. She is a licensed psychologist in California, and she has a passion for the families. That's what she does always. She teaches a lot in various contexts and places. She served as the dean of the behavioral science at the Southern California Seminary, and she is the founder of the Conferece education. And that's also the passion is to teach the people to connect psychology and theology together. That's why there are a lot of tools and a lot of methods that is available there. But the ultimate problem of humans are sin. They broke the relationship with God. That is the ultimate problem of sin. That is the foundation of their understanding of psychology. That's a unique outlook in that sense, actually. And she is passionate about teaching that, and we are grateful to have her with us this evening. So today we are going to learn more about communication and conflicts, and necessarily how we communicate effectively. And most of the problems comes birth out of miscommunication or misunderstanding, those kinds of things. So it will be, unique way we understand this also. So tonight we are, going to spend time here. It's more interactive. You can ask questions in between or the end. If you have questions, you can ask that, and we have, interactions in between. We plan everything in such a way, actually. So would you please welcome Dr. Julie Hayden as she's going to come.
Thank you. All right, thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I enjoyed Pastor Alex as a student, and I figure he probably wanted me to give you a report that he's still a very excellent student. So I'm excited to be here because I enjoy you. The times that we've been able to be at the family conference together, or the last time I was here, it's just warm and caring. So I'm just as excited to be here. So thank you for having me. So we're going to talk about a topic today that in some ways is very simple, and you know a lot of this information, but I hope to bring it alive and practice to where you have a new perspective on it so you can implement good communication in your families. So in a lot of ways, you could sum everything I'm going to teach tonight up in a verse in Scripture that we'll look at the end that says, speak the truth in love. Okay? If you want good communication, you could, tell me if you want me to move somewhere. You could just think in your mind, speak the truth in love, and you'd probably do a good job with it. But unfortunately, we do have this in nature, and we have patterns we've learned throughout the years from our families, and we've repeated them. So we don't always speak the truth in love. We've developed habits that's poor communication, and I'm going to propose that a lot of our habits of poor communication and what creates difficulty in our families is communication based in lies. It's not in truth. And so that's where I find the power of a biblical perspective, that we know what truth is and we can apply that in our life, and you're going to find some strategies as we go along today to do that. So it's an exciting topic. We'll see what you think of it. I'm going to share some of what helped me understand it and connect it to actually go change the patterns that I have in my family. So I'll share that with you. Go ahead and click it. I might come back. But first, just think of, why are you here in the first place? Why do you want to learn this information? In my opinion, from Scripture, one of the core attacks of Satan is against the family, because he's very smart. He knows if he can destroy our families, he can destroy our society. He can crumble humanity by destroying our families. It's the strength of who we are as humans. It's how God created us to be humans on earth, is in family. He said, man, woman, go multiply and subdue the earth. That strength of the family is very important in business, in organizations, in churches. So much of Scripture shows that strength of the family as foundation to many other things in life. So fundamentally, if you go back to Genesis, you see the importance of family. So we know biblically, if we have strong families, we're on the right track. You know, there's a lot of things we can handle in life when we know we have our family strong together around us. Also, we are going to enjoy life more. Bad things happen, a lot of problems can happen, but with our family strong and healthy, you feel like you can handle life and enjoy life in the midst of it all. So I think there's plenty of research that shows, just in general, you have a strong family together. When a husband and wife are enjoying their relationship, the family is going to have life satisfaction. They're going to be happier in general. Also, we know when you have the opposite, when you have conflict and stress, possibly even at the extreme violence and abuse or these other opposites of a healthy family, you're going to create an environment where children are going to struggle to grow up healthy. They're going to repeat patterns. They're going to struggle with how they feel about themselves. They're going to struggle with emotions. So we know that if you have a strong family and it's functioning well, you're going to create an environment that's going to allow your children to grow up as healthy as possible. We can't control everything, but what we can control, that's going to create an environment of safety for them to grow up in a healthy way. So that sense of stability and trust is at very young ages. Do children grow up and think, hey, you know, God loves me, He has good plans for me, you know, even though bad things happen, it's probably going to get better soon. That sense of trust that we live in a world that can be good comes from early years. So that strong, healthy family is important for your child to grow up just as it was for you and how you think about the world today. So you can keep going. So healthy family matters. I'd like to just take a look at what communication is. So if you were really good at communicating, what would you do? What would you do if you were communicating? Do you recognize that word? What's the first thing that comes to your mind? Anybody? Talking. You got it. You got A+ already. Okay? So sure. So that's one way. So you could be the active process of using words, which will be the talking, sounds, signs, behaviors, to express or exchange information, or to express your ideas, thoughts, feelings, etc. to someone else. Okay? Easy. Right? Communicating. Remember, there's two sides to that. It's what you're trying to communicate to somebody and what they're hearing. You could be trying to communicate and they're not hearing what you're trying to communicate, right? So it's two sides. So that's communication. Keep going. Conflict. Okay? We picture conflict, but what is it truly? There's a couple ways to define it. I like the third one best for tonight, but it could be a struggle for power. It could be a strong disagreement between people, and a difference that prevents agreement, a disagreement between ideas, feelings, etc. So think in your mind now, will you be able to have good communication in the midst of conflict? So you're trying to express your ideas and thoughts and wants, and the other person disagrees with you, and there's that conflict. Does that mean it's going to be a terrible situation? Does that mean that you can't have good communication? Or can you apply principles of good communication even if there's conflict? Right in the middle of it, and that's what we're going to learn tonight. So conflict's just disagreement. It doesn't have to be anything bad. In fact, you would live a very boring life if there was never conflict. Okay? If two people always agreed, you probably have a little bit of a boring life. It may be peaceful, so that's good. So depending on your personality, you're quite happy to be peaceful, or maybe you do need a little conflict in your family. But conflict can be good because it allows that two people could think differently. They don't have to agree, and there still could be a good, solid relationship. There could still be good communication and talking back and forth, even if they disagree on a topic. So we're going to look at this a little bit more. We're going to keep going. And I want you to think in your way and how you communicate, there's probably a pattern. And we're going to look at this further. So you think of who's in your family and think of how you normally communicate. Who says what? Do you have a pattern? Does one person get their feelings hurt easily and the other person is frustrated and they got their feelings hurt so easily? Does one person yell too loud and the other one's irritated and they yell? Can't you just talk quieter? Is there some pattern that you have in your family and how you communicate? Because usually there is. So we're going to be taking that pattern and looking at it and see, okay, are you happy with your pattern? Is it working well for you? Then you can just leave. Or is there something about it that you know, if Jesus was staring at that pattern, you'd say, okay, there's something here we need to change. And then what are we going to change about it? So with this, first you're looking at healthy communication in a family, and a healthy family in general is everybody safe to share their thoughts, feelings, ideas? Can everybody share them? And it doesn't mean that they can share openly anytime they want. So we'll look at that. It doesn't mean they can share at the expense of hurting another person, but there should be a way, whether there's a very small child up to a grandparent, that each person within that family has a way to safely share what they want, what they don't want, what they like, what they don't like, thoughts, feelings. That's a healthy environment. So there could be parameters around that, but that's what you're looking for. So the question to start off with is, what price do you pay to be in your family? Okay? Some people have to keep their mouth quiet in their family. Some people have to try to do everything for everybody in their family. They are in their family, it seems to be working, but they have to pay a price. So that's one question to ask, is what price does each member of your family have to pay to be in your family? And start wondering, does every person have that opportunity? And what you want them to do is share truth. That's what we're going to get to in the end. Are they able to share truth, or do they have to change it because of the dynamics of the family? Do they have to sneak it some way? Do they have to manipulate it to get the truth out? Do they have to, yell and scream it where nobody's going to hear it? How are you guys communicating within your family? That's what we're going to be looking at. So the first thing we're going to go to, well, actually before we do, stop and just take time. Do you have your pattern in your mind? Do you know your routine when you're communicating? And remember conflict in particular. So on an everyday, you might communicate very well. If there's conflict, if something goes wrong, if somebody didn't do something you were expecting them to do, you wanted them to do, what happens? When the conflict happens, what's your pattern of communication? That's what you want to identify today, that you're going to break apart and see how healthy it is. So keep us going. Oh, I was going to take this out. I might come back to it, depending on time, so I'll just point it out. But this is just for fun. There's a guy that does a lot of studies on couples, Gottman, and he says this is the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse for families, for communication. So that these communication styles will destroy a relationship. So this is just have in the back of your mind, we might bring it in, but these ways would be ways that you could destroy a relationship if you criticize and put people down in your family. If you have contempt, which would just be mean. I mean, that's a person that is actually okay, which I hope nobody in here would even have that, but it's a person they're okay saying something so mean that they do hurt the person, they don't even mind. That's how bad contempt is. Defensiveness, where you always get defensive when another person is saying something. And stonewalling, where you separate. You close off. You shut off. Okay? When a conflict is happening, you're either physically gone or emotionally you have now disappeared. Okay? So those things, we might have a chance to look back, but it's not going to be the main emphasis. But those are 4 things you could do if you really wanted to have terrible communication. Okay? Keep us going. Here's the drama triangle. Okay? This is what I want to propose tonight and see how you guys are in this area. What roles you play. So the idea here is that everybody in the family plays a role in the drama triangle. Now, if you had perfect, good, healthy communication, there will be no drama. So that's good. That's what we're going to go for. But most people, there's drama. Somebody does something, it starts the chain reaction, and there's drama. In that drama, it tends to be you have a particular role you feel most comfortable in. But you can rotate, so we'll talk about that. So here's our roles. We've got a persecutor. This is the person that's blaming everybody, attacking everybody. Most people in their family think he's the bad guy. Now, it could be a female, but he's the bad guy, He's so mean, that kind of a thing. So he seems to be taking this role always as the persecutor. And then there's the victim. Oh, poor me. Everybody's always out to get me. they tend to be helpless, and we'll talk about them in more detail. And then the rescuer dives in and protects, tries to keep the peace, tries to calm everybody down and rescue the family so that the conflict can just disappear quickly, because they do not want conflict. Okay? So we're going to look at these in detail, but start thinking, what seems to be your favorite role? What do you go in naturally? And you may start noticing now with your pattern, so-and-so plays the rescuer, so-and-so's always that persecutor, this person's the victim. Try to think who's playing what role. So let's go in and see a little bit further. Okay? Persecutor. This person is blaming somebody else, usually the victim. They're blaming them. You did this wrong, you always do this wrong, you always fail, maybe. They might enable the behavior of they're angry when the rescuer comes in. Would you let him take his consequences? You know, they're irritated at that rescuer. Yeah. They don't have a solution, though. They're just angry at that it's not going well, but they don't have a solution. They're just attacking the rescuer for trying to have a solution. The underlying problem, they're critical. They are unpleasant sometimes. They're good at finding fault. Okay? Sometimes it's an inadequacy inside them that makes them react so strongly. And they control with threats or order or rigidity. They can be loud or quiet in style. Sometimes could be a bully. Okay, so this is the persecutor. Now, think too, do you see yourself in that role? Or do other people in your family see yourself in that role? That's a good question to ask too. Because the thing about the drama triangle is, once you enter into a role, other people take their roles. So as soon as you start attacking, here comes the rescuer to protect the victim. So if everything's going smoothly, there's no drama. It's when the drama starts and people start taking on their role that they feel comfortable in. Keep it going. Victim. Oh, poor victim. Okay? Now remember, this is not a true victim. We're not talking about something really happening into a person. We're talking about a role people play in the drama of the family. So this person would come across hopeless and helpless. Everything about their life is not their fault. Everybody else is so mean. Everybody else is doing this. Even at a job, you might have a victim. It's everybody else's fault. It's not my fault that this assignment didn't get done. Okay, they play the victim. They deny any responsibility for their negative situation. They deny power or the responsibility to change anything. They won't take a stand. They might be super sensitive. You might have to be very careful with them to not offend them or make them, upset. They might pretend that they're just incapable of doing anything. Okay? They're the victim. Now this is a role they play. But you can see now it's starting to come alive, hopefully, and possibly what role you play or who plays what role. Even if you think of your kids, you might have 3 children and you even see, who's always the one attacking somebody and who's the one getting attacked and who's coming in to keep peace and rescue. Okay, next one. Rescuer. Okay, this is like the superhero. Okay, whoo, here they come. They're coming to rescue. Consistently applying short-term repairs to the victim's problem. The thing about the rescue is they are coming in to rescue, but just for a very moment. They don't have any good long-term solutions. They just want to keep peace fast. Whatever they got to say, whatever they got to do, put a Band-Aid on it so nobody's upset. Okay, they want to keep the peace. They are going to have the effort going into protecting that victim at their expense, okay? So they're going to neglect their own needs. They're going to always be working hard to help other people. They'll be overwhelmed and tired and often even have physical complaints. They're usually angry underneath and may be loud or the quiet martyr. I'll sacrifice myself, okay? And they use guilt, okay, to get their way. So even though they're coming in to rescue, they're also reminding everybody, it's okay, I'll take this again and sacrifice myself so that you get to have the lovely weight of guilt on your shoulders. Okay? So these are common roles played in families. Can you start seeing the roles that you would take on? Now you can rotate. So it might be that the rescuer dives in to rescue, and then the victim gets irritated and starts, being upset about that. And leave me alone. It wasn't your fight in the first place. And they start attacking, and they become the persecutor. And then now the rescuer has to become the victim. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I'll be quiet. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. And so they take on a victim role. So you can rotate these roles. Remember, all these roles you might play are actually based in lies. If you're trying to communicate as an aggressive person yelling and screaming something at the other person, you could just tell them, But when you're caught up in the drama, you're angry and you're aggressively telling them possibly, or you're attacking and blaming. There's still a good communication that you want to get across, but it's not getting across. Everybody's only hearing attack, attack. Okay? So you're communicating something that's probably not even true. Okay? Now, what's your favorite role so far? Like, not what role you play, but if you had to pick a role, which one seems the best? Persecutor. Oh, he wants to be a persecutor. That's a different problem we got to talk about. Okay, persecutor. Anybody else? What seems to be like that's the good role? If I got to pick a role, that's the one I want. Rescuer. Yeah, doesn't it sound great? The one thing I want to highlight is the rescuer. It's almost, in my opinion, one of the worst positions, because the message of the rescuer is not, I'm going to protect everybody. The message of the rescuer is, oh, poor victim, you're so weak. You just stay weak. I'll handle this. So you keep the victim in their place of weakness. You don't teach them how not to have to take that role. For example, people use the example of, if somebody's hungry, you could just keep giving them sandwiches or teach them to make a sandwich, Instead of giving them skills and tools to not have to be a victim, you're just helping them really fast, make the problem go away, protect them. A good example of this might be a parent that is, if somebody's in a really bad lifestyle, their child's in a bad lifestyle, instead of having it come out in the open and get them help, they're just pretending like it doesn't exist and hiding it from other family members so that, they can protect that child who may be in a dangerous road, that they need everybody to know what's happening, but we're going to hide it and keep it protected. So we're going to rescue them, but it's a situation where you may cause them more harm by doing that. Okay? So the rescue role does sound good, but it's actually a place of keeping another person down so that you can feel good about being that rescuer. Okay? All right, let's keep going. These are other ones just for fun. You don't have to remember these ones. We're going to remember our three main roles, but sometimes you have blamers. All they do all day long is blame everybody else, just like that persecutor. But I liked these because the persecutor, rescuer, and victim doesn't capture the two middle ones that are good too. Computer is the person that relies on intellect to stop from acknowledging feelings. So they just stay all intellect, all rational, no emotion. Okay, that's another kind of defense. A communication style that's not true. There's probably really emotions there, but you're going to block them off and you're going to stay distant emotionally. And a distractor will be the person that believes they will only be loved if they're viewed as cute and harmless, so they might just be distracting from anything real happening. So those are two ideas too that might fit in. The distractor might fit in the victim role, and the computer, that rational thinking, might end up in the persecutor role, just depending. Okay? All right, keep going. All right, so before we do any kind of practice, I want you to think about your roles, and I'm going to try to set you up so you do this well. Okay? First, you're going to be a bad communicator. Okay? And you can possibly bring in kids to help you be a bad communicator. It is fun because if you want to know how you can communicate, just look at your children because they copy you. They're little mini examples. Sometimes that's great, and you're like, look at my wonderful child I raised, and sometimes, oh no. copied me. That's not good. How did that happen? So remember that when you're in this. So you're going to break up. We're going to get you into groups and you're going to practice this. But depending on if you can help them see what you're doing in this little exercise, it'd be great for them to play along. I want you to pick a role, and I want you to play that role in with each other. So first, your job is to think about something you could talk about. It could be any topic that you want to talk about, but if it had, some emotion, that would be helpful. So maybe you want to say, like, I don't know which school I'm going to send my kid to next year, or it could be, where are we going to go on vacation? Something where maybe there could be disagreement. It could be any topic, but that's probably your hardest job today is think of a topic, okay? So think of a topic, and you're going to start talking, but when you're talking, I want you each to play the role. So for example, if you're going to be the persecutor, I want you to say something mean and attack the person. Well, that's probably because you never reserved spots in the first place. I told you to. You're going to attack them, okay? So probably one of the kids is going to want to attack. We'll see how this goes. But the parents, they get to decide who plays what role, I guess. So we'll see. If you're going to be the rescuer, you're getting ready. As soon as you see somebody attack, it's not her fault. It was actually my fault. I'm sorry. I should have done that. You're going to try to rescue. And then if you're the victim, you're just going to be so helpless. I should have done it. I'm so sorry. I just can never do anything right. Okay? So this is an experiment. I'm going to come try to help you because some of you are like, oh, I don't want to do this. But I bet you do it all the time, Some of you may be such great communicators that you never enter into the drama triangle. But by jumping in and practicing it, you're going to make something small big, but you can see it better. It's going to be an extreme example when you're practicing it, right? But when it's big and extreme, you're going to learn from it. You're going to be able to recognize it better. Then we'll come back and we'll be trying the healthy ways to communicate. So first, your job is to be a terrible communicator. To either attack, or to be a victim, and oh poor me, or to rescue. Okay? So if possible, and I'll help you, we'll be out there trying to do this, but if possible, you have 3 people in your group. You don't have to be family. If you want to stick together, you can, but just 3 people so you can practice each person having a different role. Okay? Are you getting it? Are you understanding it? It's going to be, I know everybody's scared. You're going to do this. I'm going to make you. I'm a professor. Okay? I'm going to walk around and stare at you, too. Alex loves that, and like, come on, counsel, So I'm going to walk around. So first of all, do you have in your mind something you can talk about? Not everybody has to have something to talk about, but in your group, one person does. Do you have something you can talk about? Raise your hand if yes, you do. You have something you can talk about. Raise your hand if you cannot think of anything to talk about. Okay, we need an idea. Pastor Alex, what idea could they talk about?
Yeah, that's a good one.
What is it?
Coming on time.
Coming on time. Okay, good job. Yes.
With the kids again, they're not getting good grades.
The
kids are not getting good grades.
Good grades. All right. So we have 2 topics, okay? One is somebody wants to tell the family, I'm tired of being late to church. We need to be on time to church. So that might be a persecutor. If you want to be the persecutor role, just come out and attack you. I'm sick and tired of you guys. You just take forever in the bathroom. I'm trying to leave. It's your fault. Okay? Or, I am sick of C's and B's. What happened to A's? I raised you better than this. Okay? So you have 2 good topics. Anybody else want to give the group a topic so they're going to be using this? What's your topic?
Being late on the bus.
On the bus. Late on the bus. Okay? Being late in general, that would be a great one. Anybody out there want to be the persecutor to yell at somebody for being late all the time? Okay? We've got some children are tired of being late. Okay? That's good. Okay, so when you're attacking, you say, I am tired of being late. And then another person has to be ready to rescue, and another person has to be pathetic. If you're in a victim role, it doesn't mean I think you're pathetic, just so you know. We're going extreme, right? For the fun of it. And if we go extreme, we're going to learn from it. All right? So, pick your teams. Even though this was an extreme example, I know you see this in your families. You can see the drama play out. And I also know there's a moment where you can jump in and take your role, or you can stop and not go in the drama. And that's what we're going to be looking at, is how to not just go back into the victim role, but instead think, I do have the ability to do something different. I don't have to just go along with everything always. I can change and I can do something different. If you're the rescuer, you can be a coach and help people learn better ways to deal with life instead of just rescuing them. Sometimes going like this, I'm going to let what's going to happen happen. I'm not going to rescue. And if you're the persecutor, you can learn better ways to communicate exactly what you want to communicate instead of having to resort to blaming or aggression or anything else. So that's what we're going to go toward is, do you today want to recognize the cycles that you've been a part of and probably learned many years ago? For example, think of your role you feel most comfortable with. Now, what was your role in your family when you were a child? A lot of times we just follow along. We rescued when we were in our family, and we have our own family, and we're still rescuing. And we rescue at school, and we rescue at work. It's just what's natural. So a lot of this, they've been there for a long time. It's been a pattern. We've seen it. We have a routine. One person says this, and it starts the domino effect. So what would it be like to stop it and do something different? So we're going to get there. So let's keep going and see a little bit more on the positive side. So remember, any of this communication, if it's in the drama, if you're attacking or you're blaming or you're pretending like you can't change anything, or you are trying to fix people in a short-term way, it's not the truth. You're not communicating what you actually want to get across. For example, you could say, hey everyone, I would like to be on time for church. Now think of how simple that is, but that's the truth. There's a lot of other drama you could add to that of you always do that or how come this, but really, in the end, you want to be on time for church. How could we do that? What could everybody do a little bit different in order to make this happen, and that people can team up and decide what's a possibility for being to church on time, but it doesn't have to be drama. If you say, I would like to be to church on time, and another person says, I know you always say that, and they attack. Now you're probably going to get defensive. I know it, or attack back. So when one person starts that, kind of reaction, instead of responding well, they attack or react, then it starts to drama again. Okay? So here's some tips. First of all, when you think of your family, can you learn to communicate your true feelings and thoughts? Do you even know what they are? For a person that plays the rescuer or the victim, you might say, where would you like to go to dinner? I don't know. Where do you want to go to dinner? Because they want to please, they want you to be happy. So what if they said, I would like pizza? Because they would like pizza. What if they were able to just share exactly? Now the other person could say, I don't want pizza. That's okay too. But it's the truth instead of some kind of a fake thing coming through in the family. Is it safe to communicate your true feelings and thoughts? Is it possible, do you believe, for each person in your family to have a time? Now, I always say, you have to have parameters, obviously, with children and with discipline, so they can't just, say anything they want anytime. But are they able, if they wanted to tell you what they want or what they're thinking or their ideas, is there a time for it? Is there a place for that? Okay? Can your ideas, thoughts, emotions be communicated while still allowing others to keep theirs? So in the more aggressive or persecutor role, sometimes, their thoughts get across just fine. They don't have any problem, but it's at the expense of other people. Now they've hurt somebody's feelings, or, somebody's afraid. There's other types of responses that come because of how they're getting their thoughts and emotions across. So you want to be able to communicate without it being at the expense of another person. Does each person in the family have a way to communicate the truth? Same concept. Okay, keep going. So this plays into the rules of the drama triangle, but it helps me lead up to some of the tools. So when you look at false communication, you have a message you want to get across. These are 3 ways to do it ineffectively. They will not get your information through, but they're common to people. So, first one's aggression. An aggressive person, yelling, screaming, intimidating, all of that, they might be communicating something, even if they are, again, it's at the expense of everybody else, but also, most of the time, everybody's ears are turned off. All they see is aggression. All they hear is aggression. They actually don't know what the message is, so it doesn't actually work. So what is the message? And if you are doing it with aggression, through intimidation or any other means, it's not actually communicating what you want to communicate. Passive would fit more in that victim role, and that's just where you're not going to communicate. Nobody knows what you think or what you want. You are just quiet about it. It might be something where somebody would be called a doormat. They're never going to tell somebody what they truly want or think because they're scared. Maybe there's some reason in their background where they're just not going to do it. Unfortunately, that's fake, right? They have thoughts. They have ideas. They have what they would want. They have dreams. They're not going to communicate it. They're going to keep it quiet. So who they are inside is not actually available to other people. It's not true communication. Okay, that's kept inside. And the passive-aggressive is more fun, right? Okay, so the passive-aggressive person, on the outside, it seems like they're being very honest with you, but they're sneaking something in somewhere else. Okay, so this is probably more like the rescuer, but it might be, oh yes, I'm fine, no problem, go ahead, that's just fine. I'll just be here alone and miserable, no problem. Okay, so this person is that throwing the guilt on, okay, so they're smiling and seeming like, yes, no problem, I'll just deal with that tomorrow, and then you're going to make them regret what they just did or said. There's going to be some kind of sneaky attack later in passive-aggressive communication. So the opposite of all this fake information is truth, and that's the next slide, truth. Okay? So, for example, if you didn't want to go out tonight, and you said, I don't want to go out tonight, I just want to stay home. That's the truth. Or you could say, I'm sick and tired of going out. You always want to go out. I just work all day long. Can't I just stay home for once? Okay? That's aggressive. Or, sure, honey, whatever you want. Just follow along. Or, sure, honey, whatever you want. We're going to have a miserable time tonight. I'm going to make sure of that. You want to go out? Sure, no problem. I'd love to go out. Boy, this restaurant's really kind of awful, isn't it? And I just have a headache and I just feel awful. And, there's going to be some payment, required. So that would be the passive-aggressive. So it's so simple, but so difficult. Healthy communication is the truth, with nothing else extra added. It's the truth without having it be at the expense of another person. And it's the truth without having some sneaky attack prepared for later. Just the truth. So if you had one thing you did differently, when you go to communicate, if you're emotional, this is going to be hard. It seems so simple until you're in the middle of a conflict, right? But if you stop and think, what is the truth I want to communicate, and that's all you communicated, you could get better and better at healthy communication without entering into any drama. No, I don't want to go tonight. Well, I really do. All right, well, I'll go. You can have communication and still disagree, and still, you can even be angry, but you're not going to have your thoughts, feelings, and emotions out there at the expense of another person, and it's going to be honest truth, okay? So, this is, if you remembered anything, this is what I'm hoping you take home tonight. Speak the truth in love is the Bible verse that represents this with nothing else. It doesn't say, if this, or, and later, here's the extra stuff after you speak the truth in love. Okay? So, the first one, just remembering kind of a biblical context to everything we just talked about. Speak the truth in love. So simple, and yet it is difficult most of the time. Some others just to remember and have in your mind as you go out trying to keep it tied, how are you going to do your communication style different? Quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. That seems so simple, but you have all these psychology books, on listening. Well, they could have just read this, I mean, you can sum it up in those. But when you're listening, how are you listening? Are you paying attention? Are you shutting them down fast and attacking? Are you, stopping communication by how you're rescuing a person? You didn't even let them share what they're thinking. You're just trying to dive in and keep the peace fast so truth never gets out there because you don't like strong emotions or conflict. So these are just ideas to think about. I want to talk more, but I'm going to keep going and then come back to that. And then just two more. As it depends on you, live at peace with all, and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. These are just kind of concepts to remember that biblical foundation on communication that's very applicable. These are principles for Christians. Every day, any relationship, but think about how your communication will be different if you actually applied them. Okay? All right, keep going. So these are some techniques that you can use to do something different. And we're going to practice it, right? These are techniques you can use to do something different. First of all, I had one that I added. Let's see if I remember it. Okay, timing. I added this, but I didn't get the PowerPoint updated. Timing is important, especially with conflict, right? Or disagreement. So if somebody just worked all day long and you're ready to disagree with them, it's probably going to end up in a conflict that uses drama. So wait. If somebody is very emotional about it, wait. Try to set up a time to talk about something like that. Don't just flippantly conflict, without thinking, is this a good time for it? Where's everybody? Do we have to leave in 10 minutes? Think about timing if you're going to have communication that's involving conflict, okay? And there's something else with that one I'm blanking. It's really important, it will come back to me. But acknowledge feelings. So if you're in the middle of a conflict, one technique to use is acknowledge feelings, because most of the time you just basically want to say, I'm right, you're wrong. Well, somebody's feelings are always real. They're true. So if somebody says, I'm just upset because blah, 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 well, you may disagree with everything they said. Like, I didn't do that. That's wrong. Well, you misinterpreted that. I didn't actually do that. That may be true. Who cares? They're still sad. They're still hurt. They're still angry. You can still identify the truth in how they're feeling. You can still acknowledge that. I didn't mean to upset. I'm not sorry that I did what I did because I think it was the right thing to do. You don't have to tell them that. But you may have done what you thought you needed to do, but you can still acknowledge that you're sorry that their feelings are hurt or that they're upset. Does that make sense? You can always still acknowledge and validate their feelings, even if you don't agree with everything they're saying. Take responsibility for your part in the problem. Most of the time in communication, it's much easier to identify what they said wrong, to go ahead and correct them. Instead, out of everything they said, instead of identifying what they said wrong and how you didn't really do that, stop and think, is there something out of this that is true that I can acknowledge? So you acknowledge their feelings and you acknowledge your part. I should have told you ahead of time. You're right. That could diffuse drama, right? So somebody is upset and, well, why didn't you tell me? Instead of attacking back, you should have known, You're right, I should have told you. Next time I will try. Sorry about that. You could just be honest. Is there a part that you can identify that is your responsibility? Take it. Okay, that would be do unto others as you would have them do unto you, because that's hard. Especially in conflict, that's not the time. You want to say, you're right, I could have done that. But they may have said 10 things that you cannot see how they're correct. If there's something you did that you can acknowledge, take the upper hand and acknowledge it. And that will diffuse the rest of the conversation. And you'd be surprised how most likely, and you can't count on this and be irritated if it doesn't happen, but most likely if you acknowledge what you have done in it, it's much easier for them to say, I shouldn't have done this either. It's much easier. So be the first person to acknowledge what you did that you could have done better. So share your true feelings and thoughts by starting with I. It's kind of a thing in psychology that people get irritated with because it's so popular. I statements. But they really work. If you start a sentence with I, people are not scared or defensive. If you say you, already they're like, defenses are rising, So if you think that, somebody's telling you all this and you're irritated and you don't even want to hear it, and you start to speak back, see if you can start the sentence with I. And it will go like this usually. I'm feeling attacked right now because I didn't purposely do that, and it seems like you think I did. So you try to focus on how you're experiencing it, because how are they going to argue with that? No, you don't feel that. It's much more difficult to start arguing if you're just sharing how you feel, what's going on with you. But if you say, you shouldn't have, you did this, they're going to say, no, I didn't, and it's easy to start that conflict back up and to enter into your roles that you're so comfortable with. Okay? So, start sentences with I, and pay attention to your thinking or interpretations. We jump to conclusions. Always. It's actually a great thing. It's how our brains work. We need that. There are times that your brain's going to jump to a conclusion and it's going to save your life. It's how our brains work. It's a great aspect of how God created us. But it doesn't mean it's always correct. When we jump to conclusions, it's natural. It's a great thing sometimes, but it doesn't mean it's true. So when your brain jumps to a conclusion, always allow that time to test it. I'm jumping to a conclusion. Is this true? Is there evidence for this? Why don't I talk to the person and make sure? So in communication and in conflict especially, when something's happening, instead of reacting fast based on your initial jumping to conclusions, before all that, stop and think. Stop and think and just think, okay, am I getting this right, or could I think of it a different way? Is there another thing that could be happening that I'm not picking up on? Why don't I check? Hey, I just want you to know, it seems like you did this and you meant this. Am I right? Because they have a chance to say, no, I just stubbed my toe. There's some other reason, that you're not considering. So when you're jumping to conclusions on something, you may miss what's really happening. So pay attention more to your thoughts. Scripture talks about keeping every thought, capture every thought, thinking, you know what I'm talking about, right? Pastor Alex could tell you. But definitely that importance on what we're thinking and how our thoughts are. And that is important. So don't just let your mind think about everything. Capture it and say, okay, thought, is this correct? Or do I need to check on it? Okay? So when you go to practicing the time here, just for fun again, to try a new way of talking to each other, I want you to take that home too and think, if something happens and it's easy for you, you just want to attack because you're that persecutor. It's easy for you. You want to attack. I want you to stop and think. Is this what you want? Do you want to enter into that drama where you're going to go round and round and nothing's going to happen good? No good communication actually comes from it. Just everybody has a bad day. And that doesn't actually produce good. If you just really want to go be a pity party victim, oh poor me, I just want to go and really look sad in the corner so somebody can rescue me. Why don't you stop and think, is that what I want to do? Or can I pull it together, see what I can do out of the situation? Nobody needs to rescue me. I can do this. I can have a good day. I don't have to let it get to me. Okay? You don't have to go into that role. Or if you see a poor victim and you want to help by rescuing them, can you stop and think, is that what's going to be good for them? Is that should I do that right now, or do I need to wait and see what's the healthy way to respond to this? Okay? So before you jump into your role, before you react emotionally, which is usually what's happening, stop and think, make sure you're interpreting it correctly, and think, is there a better way I can handle myself now so I don't repeat the cycle and teach my children to repeat the cycle generation after generation? Now is the time to do something different, okay? So, let's see if there's anything else I skipped that I want to go. I think we're ready to practice, but I want to give you tangible things to practice, okay? You have way too much fun being bad, but being good's harder. So, when you're talking, and same thing, you can even have it be a good conflict. I want you to decide a tool you're going to have in your mind ahead of time ready to use so it's more comfortable to use. So you can either, go back up so I can remember real quick some of the, you can either, well first of all, timing, that's going to be hard to practice here, but in general, think, if you know a conflict's coming, try to plan it. Don't just let it happen. Say, you know what, this is really frustrating, but I say we plan it, talk about it tonight when we're more relaxed. Try to plan it. You can acknowledge feelings, where no matter what they're yelling at, they can even be attacking you. Doesn't mean you have to jump in and play that drama, right? So even if somebody chooses to start their mock session with an attack, then the other person's going to calm it back down in a healthy way by saying, I'm sorry that upset you so much. You know you're right. I should have done this. You're right. You're agreeing or you're connecting with the feelings, okay? You're thinking, is there someplace I could take responsibility just for good communication? You might start with I. I'm really upset. I feel attacked right now because you're yelling. You're just saying what's happening. You're just sharing the truth with them without a hidden agenda. Or you're going to be paying attention maybe to how you're interpreting it and just think it through before you respond. These are kind of the techniques you're going to use. And remember, if nothing else, in your mind you're thinking, what's the truth that I want to communicate? Can I communicate it as clearly as possible without having any hidden agenda and without doing it in a way that's going to be at the expense of the other person? Okay, make sense? All right, we're going to practice again. Okay, so have some kind of conflict. If you use the same one, it's great because you're going to see the difference in how the other person responds. Okay, so I want you to practice some of these. Try to get in your mind what you think you're going to try to do and say, and let's practice one more time. Even if it seems silly, if you practice here, you're more likely to try it later. Okay? And remember the drama triangle. What questions do you have from all this? Things that you can think of, scenarios where, sometimes it's simple to hear and difficult to implement. So what type of questions come to mind? Okay. I'll be around so you can sneak me a question if you'd like to. But hopefully you take this and use it. This is something, it changed me. I was a very good passive-aggressive communicator. So this is something that I love, yes.
When we try to resolve a conflict by practically implementing the good things, by hearing one's opinion and the other, what happens if it comes again?
Sure.
How it resolves?